I guess I should start by telling you a little about myself. My name's Tony. I'm 38 years old, born and raised in New Jersey. I've got a small, tight-knit family, just my mom and my younger brother Joey. My dad passed away a few years ago, so it's just been the three of us keeping things together. But let's be real, there's not much for me to say that would make you think my life's anything special. I'm not one of those guys who's out there making big moves or leaving any kind of lasting mark on the world. I'm just a janitor. That's who I am. And for the longest time, I hated that. I've been working the night shift at a law office in Manhattan for the past 6 years. The office is one of those sleek corporate buildings, you know, the kind where the people inside are making six figures and have power and influence. And then there's me, just the guy who comes in at midnight after they've all gone home to mop the floors, empty the trash, clean the bathrooms. I don't even get a desk or a corner to myself. I'm invisible to them. It's like I'm not even there, except when I'm cleaning up after their mess. And don't get me wrong, I don't mind the physical labor. Not really. It's the fact that I feel like I'm constantly stuck in the background, never a part of anything that matters. Nobody cares about me. They don't even look me in the eye when I walk through the hallways. It's like I'm some kind of ghost, just another body going through the motions. Every day's the same. I clock in, grab my cleaning supplies, and get to work. The offices are empty, the lights flicker overhead, and all I hear is the sound of my own footsteps echoing off the walls. I've long since stopped trying to make things feel meaningful. I mean, what's the point? I'm just doing this job because it's the only thing I can do. I can't afford to go back to school. I can't afford to leave New Jersey and move somewhere else where I might have a shot at something better. I can't afford anything, really. Everything feels like a dead end, and no matter how hard I work, there's no escape. When I'm not cleaning, I'm at home in my small, rundown apartment, sitting on the couch, staring at the TV. My mom still tries to get me to go out with her sometimes. Family dinners, the occasional birthday party, but I don't know. I just don't feel like I belong there anymore. Joey's doing better than me, always hustling and finding ways to climb up. But I'm stuck in the cycle, drowning in the monotony of a life that feels pointless. I hate to admit it, but I've gotten bitter. My dreams, whatever they were, feel like they've been long buried under the weight of my frustration and anger. I watch people go by in their nice clothes, their fancy cars, and I wonder what it would be like to have something, anything that makes me feel like I matter. But that's just it, isn't it? I don't matter. I'm just a guy in a uniform, cleaning up messes and never being seen. I tell myself I'll do better tomorrow. Maybe I'll try to fix things. Maybe I'll stop being so miserable. But by the time tomorrow rolls around, I'm back to feeling stuck in the same hopeless routine. One night, after finishing up my shift and heading home, something happens that I can't explain. The city was its usual loud self, and I remember walking down the street, my hands stuffed in the pockets of my coat, head down, trying to ignore the cold wind that whipped through the alleyways. I didn't even realize how dark it had gotten. It wasn't until I felt the sharp pain in my side that I knew something was wrong. I looked up, startled, and saw a man in front of me. He was tall, wearing a hoodie, and his eyes were wild, almost desperate. The knife he held was gleaming under the streetlight. I barely had time to react before it sank to my side. I gasped, feeling the sharp sting. It was so sudden, so unexpected. I didn't even scream. I just watched, like it wasn't even happening to me. He pulled the knife out and the pain intensified. Blood seeped out from the wound, soaking through my jacket. But I still couldn't bring myself to scream. "Give me your wallet," he growled, his voice shaking. But I didn't care. What was a wallet? What was the point? I couldn't even find the energy to try and protect myself. It felt like everything in me was just drained. I was tired, so tired of my life, tired of everything. The man, seeing that I wasn't responding, pushed me harder. I stumbled back, feeling my legs go weak. But instead of fear, there was this strange feeling that settled in. It wasn't fear, not really. It was a deep, unshakable calm, as if the world was suddenly quieter. The pain wasn't even that bad anymore. Everything felt distant somehow. Detached. And then everything went dark. I don't know if I lost consciousness, but I didn't feel anything anymore. There was no pain, no fear, no panic. It was like I had floated above it all. out of my body. I couldn't explain it at first. It wasn't like being asleep. I wasn't dreaming. I could still think, still feel, but it was like I wasn't tied to the physical world anymore. My body was still lying there on the cold concrete, bleeding out, but I wasn't in it anymore. I was somewhere else. I floated above my body, watching the scene unfold. I could hear the faint sounds of the world, the distant murmur of people talking, the distant wail of sirens, but none of it seemed real. Not to me, not in this moment. I could see the faces of the people around me, the fear in their eyes, but they couldn't see me. I wasn't there, not in the way I had been before. And that's when it hit me. The realization. I was dead. I had died. But I wasn't scared. There was no panic, no regret. There was just peace. A peace so profound, so still, that it made everything I had ever known feel insignificant. In that moment, all the anger, all the bitterness, the frustration I'd carried for years, it was gone. It didn't matter anymore. For the first time in a long time, I felt free. But I couldn't stay there forever, could I? There was something pulling me forward, drawing me into the darkness ahead. I didn't know what it was. I didn't know what awaited me, but I was willing to follow it. And then I saw the light. The light didn't come all at once. It started as a gentle glow, like the faintest shimmer of dawn before the sun breaks the horizon. I was drawn to it instinctively, as though it were calling me home. As I moved closer, the glow intensified, but it didn't hurt. It wasn't bright in a blinding way. It was soft, warm, and inviting, a light that promised safety, peace, and understanding. I didn't have to think about it. I just moved toward it, no questions, no hesitation. It felt as if the very essence of who I was, my thoughts, my memories, my identity, was being drawn into the light. My physical self was left behind, forgotten in that alley where I had fallen, forgotten in the job I had hated for so long. I was no longer that janitor. I was no longer Tony, the invisible man who cleaned up other people's messes. Here, I was simply me. I felt no weight, no pain. I wasn't bound to the limitations of my old life. My body, broken and lifeless on the ground, was a distant memory. My connection to it had loosened, like a thread unwinding from a spool. I wasn't confined by flesh anymore, not by the body that had dragged me through years of discontent. It felt freeing. As I moved through the light, I realized something profound. There was no fear in this place. There were no worries about what had come before or what would come after. There was only peace. Complete, absolute peace. For the first time, I wasn't looking over my shoulder or worrying about what was next. I was free. I looked back, and the scene of my death was still there, my body lying on the cold concrete, the world rushing around it. The people gathered around, some looking for help, others just standing there, unsure of what to do. But to me, it seemed so distant, like it wasn't even my world anymore. I wasn't a part of that anymore. And I realized that maybe, just maybe, it was time to let go. I didn't need to mourn the life I had left behind. I didn't need to regret the things I hadn't done, the dreams I had never pursued, the relationships I had never nurtured. None of that mattered here. Here, in this place, I was free from all of it. I was just me. I could feel myself moving further into the light, and as I did, it began to shift. The light took shape, like a mist turning into a figure. And there, standing before me, was a presence I had not expected, but somehow knew instantly. It was a man. A figure bathed in light, so radiant that I couldn't see his face clearly at first. But there was something familiar about him. The warmth, the compassion that radiated from him. It was unlike anything I had ever known in my life. His presence was soothing, like a balm to the wounds I hadn't even known I carried. He spoke, but it wasn't with words, at least not in the way I understood words. His voice didn't come from his mouth. It came from everywhere, inside me, outside me, filling the space all around me. I didn't have to strain to hear it. It was simply there, resonating deep within me. "My beloved child," he said, though his voice wasn't what I expected. It wasn't like a whisper or a shout. It was an overwhelming sense of calm, of unconditional love. "You are safe. You are home." I didn't know who he was, but in that moment, I didn't need to know. I knew that this was not some stranger I was meeting. This was someone who knew me better than I knew myself. I felt understood in a way that no one on earth had ever understood me. I had always carried this weight, this bitterness, this sense of being overlooked, of being invisible. But in his presence, none of that mattered. There was no judgment, There was no condemnation. There was just a deep and unexplainable sense of acceptance. As if every mistake, every failure, every dark moment in my life had been forgiven, and it was okay. I wasn't an outcast. I wasn't the janitor who never mattered. I was his child, his beloved child. I didn't need to ask for forgiveness. I didn't need to beg for it. It was given freely, like a gift I never thought I deserved. But somehow it felt like the only thing I had ever truly deserved. His love washed over me, and for the first time in my life, I felt whole. I could see in the light of this presence the depth of my own pain, but it was not a burden to carry anymore. It was just part of who I had been. And here, in this place, it didn't define me. It didn't control me. It was just a memory, something that had happened but no longer held me captive. His presence was so overwhelming, so all-encompassing, that I couldn't imagine ever leaving it. For a moment I thought, this is all I need, this is enough. But then, as quickly as the thought formed, I felt something else, a pull, a calling. There was more. There was more than just this peace. There was something beyond this place, something that beckoned me forward, deeper into the light. The figure before me seemed to acknowledge my thoughts, and he smiled. Though his face was still hidden in the light, I could feel it, a warmth that spread through me, filling me with hope. "You are loved, Tony," he said again, but this time it was more than just a statement. It was a promise. "You are never alone." And in that moment, I understood. I wasn't meant to stay here. Not yet. I was not finished with my life. There was something else I had to do, something beyond this peace. The light seemed to grow brighter, and the figure before me began to fade. But not in a way that scared me. It wasn't a goodbye. It was a promise that I would not be left alone, that peace would always be with me. And then I heard him clearly, his voice like thunder, and yet like the gentlest whisper at the same time. "Go back, Tony. Your time is not yet done, but you must return with purpose." I didn't understand fully. Go back? What did that even mean? Was I supposed to go back to my life on Earth? To the job I hated, to the same life I had left behind, to all the disappointment and pain I'd been carrying? But before I could question it further, I felt myself moving, swirling, pulled away from that space, pulled back into something else, something heavy. The darkness swallowed me once again, but this time it wasn't empty. It wasn't peaceful. It was a return to something that felt different. And I didn't understand why, but I knew everything was about to change. The darkness that had swallowed me felt endless, like being trapped in a space where nothing could touch me, nothing could reach me. There was no time, no sense of direction, no ground beneath me. I wasn't falling, but I wasn't standing still either. I felt weightless, like a leaf caught in a gentle breeze. It was disorienting at first, but I quickly grew accustomed to it, as if my very essence had learned how to exist in this space. It felt like an eternity had passed in that dark void. I could feel the emptiness, the silence pressing against me. But I knew something. No, someone was coming. I didn't have to wait long. A soft light began to flicker in the distance. At first, it was just a tiny dot, so far away that I wasn't sure if it was real. But as I focused, it grew, expanding slowly, drawing me toward it with a magnetic pull. The light wasn't blinding, but it was powerful, pure, warm, and inviting. It didn't burn my eyes, it didn't cause discomfort. It felt natural. And I was drawn to it, like a moth to a flame, but this time I wasn't afraid. As I moved toward the light, I felt a shift within me, a change, something that clicked into place. It was like I was moving toward something familiar, something I had known deep within me, even if I couldn't quite grasp what it was. The light enveloped me, and then, as if the light parted like a veil, I saw him, Jesus. I recognized him instantly. There were no words, no introductions. There was just this undeniable knowing, this deep, unspoken truth that settled in my soul. He was there, standing before me, radiating a love so pure and profound that it took my breath away. I couldn't even describe it. It wasn't just the light around him. It was him. His presence was so full, so complete, like the very essence of compassion, grace, and mercy had taken form in front of me. I could feel his love filling the empty spaces inside me, healing parts of myself I didn't even know needed healing. There was no need for small talk. There was no need for anything else. His gaze, so warm and steady, met mine, and in that moment, I felt seen. For the first time in my life, I wasn't just Tony the janitor. I wasn't the man no one noticed, the one who worked late nights to clean up after others, the one who felt invisible. I wasn't the person weighed down by bitterness and regret. Here in this sacred space, I was seen for who I truly was. He didn't say anything at first. He didn't need to. His gaze was enough. It was filled with understanding, with compassion, with everything I had longed for my entire life. It was as though he knew every pain I had carried, every disappointment, every unspoken fear, and he still accepted me. In his eyes, I was more than my failures, more than my regrets. Finally, he spoke, not with words, but with a voice that resonated deep within my soul, a voice that echoed in the very core of my being. "My beloved child," he said, "you are loved beyond measure. I have always been with you, even when you could not see me. You are never alone. Not now, not ever." Tears welled up in my eyes, not because I was sad, but because in that moment I felt something I had never felt before. Total, unconditional love. I had spent my entire life feeling like I wasn't enough, like I didn't matter. But here in this place, none of that mattered. I wasn't being judged. I wasn't being punished for my shortcomings. I was simply loved. And that love was so pure, so overwhelming, that I couldn't help but surrender to it. For the first time in my life, I didn't have to prove myself. I didn't have to earn it. It was just given to me freely and without question. As I stood there, enveloped in his presence, a profound peace settled over me. It was a peace that I couldn't explain, a peace that reached deep into my bones, into the parts of me that had been broken for so long. I felt whole in a way I hadn't felt in years, whole in a way that had nothing to do with my job, my failures, or the pain I had carried all those years. Jesus reached out to me then, and I could feel his hand, strong, gentle, and warm, resting upon my shoulder. It was like a touch that reached beyond the physical. It was a touch that spoke directly to my soul. "You have carried so much, my child," he said, his voice a gentle whisper in the stillness. "But you do not need to carry it anymore. Let go of your burdens. You are forgiven. You are free." And in that moment, I felt it. I felt all the bitterness, all the anger, all the resentment I had carried for so long melt away. I didn't even realize how heavy they had been until they were gone. I felt light, so light that I wondered if I might float away into the heavens themselves. I knew that my life hadn't been easy. I knew I had lived it with a sense of futility, like doing a job I hated, carrying the weight of regret and dissatisfaction on my shoulders. I had dreamed of something more, but I didn't know how to get it. I didn't know where to find it. But here in this moment with Jesus, I realized something else. I had always had access to it. I had always been loved, always been seen, always been worthy, even when I felt like I wasn't. "You are not alone," he said again, his voice as comforting as a mother's lullaby. "I have been with you all along, and now I want to show you something." Before I could ask him what he meant, I was suddenly aware of something new. A vision unfolded before me, like a movie playing across the vast expanse of the light. It was my life, my future, to be exact. I saw myself not as the janitor in New York who cleaned floors and felt invisible, but as someone who had found his purpose. I saw myself walking into rooms, not to clean them, but to brighten them, to bring hope. I saw myself helping people, lifting them up, telling them they weren't alone, just as I had once thought I was. I saw myself making a difference, touching lives, spreading love where there had been none. For the first time, I could see it. My life had meaning. It wasn't about the job I did. It wasn't about the paycheck or the recognition. It was about the love I could give, the lives I could touch. I realized that my true worth had nothing to do with my occupation or status. It had everything to do with the love I could offer to others. And that vision was more than just a glimpse. It was a promise that my life, which I had once thought was wasted, had a purpose. It wasn't over. It wasn't meaningless. It was part of something far bigger, something much more beautiful than I had ever realized. Jesus smiled then, that same gentle, knowing smile. "This is your calling, Tony. You are meant to spread love, to heal, to be a light to others, just as I have been a light to you." And as I stood there, surrounded by the warm glow of his presence, I felt a sense of purpose fill me, stronger than anything I had ever felt before. This was why I was here. This was what I had been waiting for. There was no longer any doubt. I was ready to embrace this life of love and purpose, ready to fulfill the promise that Jesus had shown me. But even as I basked in this newfound purpose, I felt something else. Something was calling me. The peace, the love, all of it, while beautiful and profound, was not where I was meant to stay. There was still more. There was still the world that needed healing, and that was where I had to go next. I wasn't done yet, not by a long shot. But first I had to go back to Earth, back to a world that still needed love. As I felt myself being drawn toward that familiar magnetic pull, I knew I wasn't alone. Jesus was with me, and he would always be with me, guiding me, loving me, reminding me of who I truly was. I wasn't the janitor anymore. I was a messenger of love, hope, and redemption. And now it was time for me to return to the life I had left behind. But I would never be the same. As I felt myself being pulled back toward the earth, there was a moment where everything paused. The vision of Jesus faded, but his presence remained, like a gentle hand resting on my heart. And then, in the silence that followed, another vision began to unfold before me. This one, unlike any I had seen before. It wasn't the darkness that had swallowed me when I first arrived. It wasn't the empty, vast nothingness I had wandered through. It wasn't even the warm, inviting light of Jesus. This time, it was a vision of me, but it wasn't the me I had been or the me I thought I would become. This was the me I had always dreamed of, the man I had never dared to believe was possible. I was standing in a room full of people. They weren't just any people. They were people in need. People who were struggling, people who had been lost, people who felt invisible, just like I had felt for so many years. But in this vision, I wasn't the janitor who cleaned up after them. I wasn't the man who mopped floors, who was unnoticed, who felt worthless. I was there for them. My purpose wasn't to scrub away their messes. My purpose was to help them clean up their lives. I was talking to them, listening to them, encouraging them. I wasn't just offering a simple kindness, I was offering hope. I saw myself helping people find the strength they didn't even know they had. I saw myself lifting others up, one by one, in the same way that Jesus had lifted me. In one moment, I saw myself with a man who had been down on his luck, struggling with addiction. I saw the despair in his eyes, the same despair I had once felt. And yet, somehow, he wasn't beyond saving. I reached out to him, not with words, but with a sense of understanding, of deep empathy. In that moment, I wasn't the one trying to save him. It was the love, the light, the compassion that flowed through me. I was simply a vessel for it. And in return, he found the courage to take the first step toward healing. And then in the next moment, I saw myself sitting with a young woman who had lost hope, whose heart was broken by betrayal. She sat before me, tears streaming down her face, but instead of judging her, I listened. I didn't rush to offer advice or try to fix her. I simply listened. And in that moment, I knew her healing wasn't about me fixing her. It was about me being there, offering her a space where she could feel seen, heard, and understood. I wasn't a healer in the traditional sense. I wasn't a counselor or a therapist. I wasn't anyone important. But the love I offered, the love that had been given to me, was the most powerful thing in the world. It was what the world needed. It was what I needed. And in this vision, I saw myself becoming a conduit for that love, a light to others who, like me, had once felt lost and broken. And then the vision shifted. I saw myself at the end of my life. I wasn't surrounded by a crowd of people who praised me or lifted me up as some great leader. Instead, I was surrounded by people whose lives I had touched, people I had helped in small ways, people I had lifted up when they felt down, people I had shown the love and acceptance that I had so desperately needed. There was no grand funeral procession, no elaborate memorial, but there was something so much more meaningful. There was gratitude. There were people who remembered my words, my actions, the way I had made them feel. In the eyes of those who I had touched, I saw the kind of legacy I had always dreamed of, the legacy of love, of compassion, of being a beacon of light in a world that often feels so dark. It was a quiet life, not one of fame or fortune, but one of meaning. And in that moment, I knew this was the life I was meant to live. This was the purpose I had been searching for all along. It wasn't about what I did, it was about how I made people feel. It was about love. That was all. As the vision faded, I felt a deep sense of peace settle over me. I wasn't afraid, I wasn't uncertain. The path before me was clear, and it was a path of love. No longer would I be defined by my job, my failures, or the bitterness I had carried for so long. I was meant to be a light. And with that light, I would touch the lives of others, offering them the same peace and hope that Jesus had offered me. And then as the vision came to an end, I felt the pull of the earth again. The pull of time, of reality, of the life I had once known. But this time, I wasn't afraid. I wasn't alone. I was ready to go back, ready to live with purpose, ready to share the love that had changed my life with a world that desperately needed it. As I began to fade back into the darkness, I held on to that vision of love, of light, of my future self, the man who would change lives, one person at a time. I wasn't returning to my old life. I was returning to a new life. A life with meaning, a life with purpose, and most importantly, a life filled with love. The love I had always longed for. The love I had always been worthy of. I don't know how long I was lost in that place of love, in that warmth that radiated through me and filled every crevice of my being. But as peaceful as it was, there was still something pulling at my heart, something nagging at the edges of my consciousness, urging me to look beyond my own healing. I didn't know it at the time, but it was a pull that would lead me to understand the world in ways I could never have imagined before. Suddenly, the beauty of the realm I had been immersed in began to fade. The brilliance of the light that had surrounded me dimmed, and my peaceful heart tightened as I found myself gazing downward toward Earth. At first, I thought I was simply viewing the world from a great distance, but as I focused, I realized something was very different. What had once seemed like a shining, blessed place was now marred with shadows, dark clouds swirling around every corner, from city streets to the quiet corners of rural towns. And beneath those clouds, I could feel the weight of suffering. There was a deep ache in my chest, a pit that seemed to grow as I watched the vision unfold. This wasn't a simple glance at Earth. It was as if I was being shown the very core of it. I saw the hungry, the broken, the desperate. I saw the abandoned and the abused, their pain almost palpable, as if it was pressing against my own heart, almost suffocating me. The vision shifted again, and now I could see the violence that plagued this world, people hurting one another in so many ways, emotionally and physically. I saw people killing each other, fighting over land, over resources, over ideas. Anger and hatred were like raging fires, consuming everything they touched. I saw families torn apart by addiction, by abuse, by despair. And it wasn't just the criminals, the outcasts, or the hopeless. It was everyone. Even those who seemed to have it all, the wealthy, the powerful, were empty. Their hearts, too, were chained by bitterness, by pride, by fear of vulnerability. It felt as though the entire world was in chains, unable to break free, unable to rise above the limitations and struggles they had been burdened with. I was no longer looking at individual lives. I was seeing the collective brokenness of humanity. Even in the places of faith where people gathered to worship and to seek the divine, I could see the cracks. Division was everywhere. There was no unity, only judgment, arguments, and disagreements. The churches, the mosques, the synagogues, these holy places were not immune to the anger and division that ran rampant through society. People clung to their differences, their labels, their identities, and in doing so, they lost sight of what had originally brought them together: love, peace, and healing. The more I watched, the more I felt the unbearable weight of the world's suffering. It wasn't just the violence I saw. It wasn't just the hatred, the poverty, or the disease. It was the deep loneliness. I saw the isolation in people's eyes, the feeling of being lost and misunderstood. I saw people who had given up on love because they had been hurt so many times before. People who no longer believed that they could change, that the world could change. There was so much pain, so much fear, so much sadness. I felt it all, every ache, every cry, every loss. It was overwhelming. And in the midst of all of this, I realized something profound. The world wasn't just broken, it was lost. It was as if humanity had forgotten what it meant to love, to truly love. We had become so focused on our differences, so consumed by our fears, that we had forgotten the most basic truth that Jesus had shown me, that love was the answer. It was the cure for all of this pain, this suffering. But that love had to start somewhere. And if it didn't start with us, if we didn't make the choice to be the change the world needed, then there was no hope. I felt myself grow heavy, the weight of what I had seen pressing down on me. How could I go back to Earth now? How could I return to a world so broken, so divided, and so full of suffering? What could one man do to change it? What could I do? As the vision continued to unfold, I saw that it wasn't just the physical suffering that was so overwhelming. It was the spiritual void. People were disconnected from each other, disconnected from God, disconnected from their true selves. And that disconnect I saw was the root of everything else. The hatred, the violence, the despair. Without a connection to love, to the divine, to the source of life itself, people were wandering in the dark, hoping that material success or fleeting pleasures would give them the meaning they so desperately craved. And yet, I also saw something else. In the midst of all this suffering, there were still people who hadn't given up. I saw those who reached out to help, to heal, to spread love. It wasn't the majority, but it was enough. Enough to give me hope. I saw people who were working tirelessly, day after day, to make the world a better place. Teachers, social workers, activists, parents, neighbors. People who, despite the chaos around them, chose to love. People who chose to make a difference in whatever small way they could. The vision grew clearer, and I realized that I had been shown this not just to make me feel hopeless or overwhelmed, but to remind me of something else, that there was still hope. That love was still the answer, that even in the darkest times, there were always people trying to bring light. And that I could be one of those people, that I had the power to be a part of the change. Jesus had shown me the beauty of the love that could heal the world. Now, he was showing me the reality of the brokenness that needed healing. I understood then, love wasn't just for me. It wasn't just for those who had been saved or healed. Love was for everyone, especially the ones who had given up. And that love had the power to transform not just individuals, but the very world we lived in. It was a daunting thought. It was terrifying. But at the same time, I felt a sense of responsibility stir within me, a deep, burning desire to do something, anything, to help make this world better. The vision wasn't just a glimpse into the suffering of the world. It was a call to action, a call to return, not just to my life, but to my mission. Jesus had shown me the beauty of love. Now he was showing me the pain of the world. And I knew, deep down, that I had a role to play in bringing those two things together. It was as if everything in the universe came to a standstill. The vastness of space, the light that filled it, the realm I had been floating in, it all seemed to pause as though holding its breath. And then, in that moment of stillness, I heard a voice. No, not a voice in the traditional sense, but something far more profound. A communication that resonated directly in my heart, bypassing words and reaching the very core of my being. It was Jesus. His presence was overwhelming. It wasn't like hearing a voice. It was more like the entire universe bending toward me with a message that I couldn't ignore. I felt an immense compassion in his gaze, a gaze that held no judgment, only love, but with something else, something urgent. I have shown you the beauty of love, he said, though not with words, but with the depth of understanding that only the heart can comprehend. I have shown you the pain of the world, but I cannot do this alone. The world is at a crossroads, my child. It stands on the edge of a great abyss. Time is running out. His words, or rather the feeling that accompanied them, hit me with the force of a storm. There was an intensity in his voice, a divine urgency that pressed against my chest like a heavy weight. I felt the truth of what he said, and it was like an arrow piercing through the layers of my mind. The world, our world, was in trouble, and it wasn't just the external suffering I had seen. It was the spiritual decay, the heart of humanity, fractured and lost, crying out for healing. You have been shown the truth of what is and what can be, Jesus continued. You have seen the love that can heal. But the world cannot change unless those who know the truth step forward. The brokenness cannot be mended if those who have received my love hold it to themselves. I didn't fully understand, but I knew deep down that he was asking me to do something. To act. To make a choice. Go back, my child, he said. Go back to Earth. You are not finished. You have a role to play. There are those who are lost, those who have not yet felt my love, and those who have forgotten what it means to truly live in love. You have been given a second chance for a reason. His words wrapped around my heart, binding me to something greater than myself. There was a pull in his voice, something stronger than gravity, that urged me to listen, to understand that this wasn't just a message for me, but for all of humanity. The world needed change. And that change could only come from love, from the love that had been so freely offered to me, now to be shared with others. Your life has a new purpose, Jesus continued. You are called to be a messenger of that love, a beacon in the darkness. You must return, not just to survive, but to spread the message that love can heal all things. Forgiveness, compassion, understanding, these are the gifts that will transform the world. You must share them, my child. I felt a sense of peace, yes, but also a growing urgency that I couldn't ignore. He was right. The world was in desperate need of change, and if I was given the chance to return, if I was being called back, it was for a reason. My life had been meaningless before, just going through the motions, resenting the world and the job I hated. But now everything was different. Now there was purpose. I hesitated. The thought of going back to the life I had left behind, the life that had been so full of bitterness and emptiness, felt almost unbearable. I had felt freedom here. I had felt peace in the presence of Jesus. Could I really go back to that broken world? Could I really return to the fight? But then I realized something. This wasn't just about me. It wasn't about my comfort or what I wanted. It was about a world that needed healing, a world that needed love. And love, as I had learned, was never easy. Love was not about avoiding pain or discomfort. It was about facing the darkness and choosing to shine in it. Love was an act of will, not just a feeling. And Jesus was showing me that my return wasn't about reliving my old life. It was about embracing a new one. I will return, Lord, I said, though I didn't know how the words escaped me. It felt like a promise I had no right to make, but something deep inside me knew that I couldn't ignore the call. I will return, and I will share the message of love. At that moment, I felt something shift. I felt myself being drawn back, as if an invisible hand was pulling me away from this realm of peace, of light, and back toward the earth. But it wasn't a cruel thing. It wasn't a punishment. It was a calling. I was being sent back, not because I had failed, but because I had been given a new purpose. I was being sent to be the change, to bring hope, and to spread love to a broken world. I had a mission now. I wasn't just returning to my old life. I was being reborn, transformed, with a new heart and a new purpose. I didn't fully know what that would look like, but I knew one thing for sure. I couldn't go back to being the same person I was. I couldn't keep walking through life as if it didn't matter. It was time for me to live for something greater than myself. Go now, my child. The world needs you. And then, just as quickly as it had come, the light began to fade and I felt myself being pulled away. The peace I had known seemed to slip away, but it wasn't lost. It was now a part of me. As I drifted back toward my body, I knew that I wasn't returning to nothing. I wasn't just a man waking up from a near-death experience. I was a man with a purpose. I was ready. I had no idea what would come next, but I knew that I was being called to do something greater, something that mattered. And as I felt my awareness slipping back into the darkness, I could almost hear his voice one last time, whispering words of encouragement and love. You are loved. You are forgiven. Now go and love. I woke up in an unfamiliar place, the harsh fluorescent lights above me stinging my eyes as I blinked against their brightness. My body ached in ways I couldn't explain, like it had been hit by a freight train. The dull, rhythmic beeping of machines filled the room, but my focus was not on that. It was on the overwhelming feeling inside me, like a heavy weight in my chest, but a weight that wasn't bad, like a burden of purpose rather than pain. I was alive, but I knew I wasn't the same. The world around me seemed so disconnected from what I had just experienced. The sterile white walls of the hospital room, the beeping machines, the faint smell of antiseptic, it all felt so far removed from the peace I had just known. For a moment, I wanted to close my eyes and retreat back into that world, to return to the place of light and love. It was tempting, but then I remembered why I was here, why I was back. I remembered what Jesus had told me. Go now, my child, the world needs you. I sat up slowly, trying to shake off the grogginess that clung to my body. The paramedics had been amazed that I survived. I had been stabbed so violently they thought I'd never make it. But here I was alive, breathing. I couldn't ignore the truth of it all. This wasn't just some random second chance. This was purpose. I tried to move, but a nurse walked into the room, her face lighting up when she saw my eyes were open. "Oh, thank God! You're awake. How do you feel?" she asked, her voice a mix of surprise and relief. I didn't answer right away. I wasn't sure how to. How could I explain this? How could I tell her that I wasn't the same person who had walked into this hospital, the person who had been walking around New York as a janitor, going through the motions of life without a care or a direction? How could I explain that I had just seen the truth of everything, of love, of life beyond death, of Jesus, and that he had given me a mission? I feel different, was all I could manage. It was true. I felt different, like a weight had been lifted off me, like I had just been shown the meaning of everything. The nurse smiled, probably thinking I was just groggy from the drugs in my system. That's normal after a trauma like what you've been through. You're going to be okay. But I wasn't just going to be okay. I wasn't just going to get over it. I had been changed, and nothing about my life was going to be the same. I needed to tell someone. I needed to tell everyone. Over the next few days, as I recovered in the hospital, I spent my time reflecting on everything I had seen, everything I had learned. The visions were still so fresh in my mind. I remembered the love in Jesus' eyes, the peace that washed over me when I had been floating outside of my body. I remembered the vision of my future, the person I could become if I embraced my true purpose. And I remembered the suffering I had seen in the world, the way people were trapped in their own pain, lost and broken. The world wasn't just in need of healing, it was in desperate need of love. I couldn't keep this to myself. I had to share it. When my family came to visit me, I couldn't hold it in anymore. I told them what had happened, how I had been attacked and died, how I had been taken into a new realm, and how I had met Jesus. I told them about the love I had felt, the clarity of the purpose he had shown me. I spoke about the future I had seen, a future of healing, of people working together in love and forgiveness, breaking free from their chains of bitterness and hatred. I told them that I had been called to share this message. Some of them looked at me as if I were crazy. It wasn't the reaction I was hoping for. My older brother John gave me a skeptical look and shook his head. You've been through a lot, man. I know the attack was traumatic, but this? Are you sure you're okay? I am okay, John, I said, my voice firm with the truth of it. I'm more than okay. I'm alive, and I have a purpose now, a real purpose. I'm not going back to the old life. I can't. There's too much at stake. But not everyone doubted me. My sister Maria, who had always been more open-minded, listened intently, her eyes softening as I spoke. She reached out, her hand resting on mine. I believe you, she said quietly. I don't know how it all works, but I believe you. You've always had a kind heart, but this feels different. I can see it in you. Her words gave me the strength I needed to press on. Even if others doubted me, I knew what I had experienced. I had seen the truth of what Jesus had shown me. I had seen the brokenness of the world, and I had seen the healing power of love. The next few weeks were a whirlwind. I left the hospital and started going back to the life I had known. The janitorial work, the long shifts, the days that blended into each other. But nothing felt the same. I couldn't look at my job the same way. I couldn't look at anything the same way. I knew I had to do more. I knew I couldn't go on pretending that my life was just about surviving another day. I had to find a way to share the message of love, redemption, and purpose that I had been given. At first, it was hard. It was difficult to talk about my experience with people. I didn't want to sound crazy, and I didn't know how to explain what I had seen. But slowly, I started to open up. I shared my story with coworkers, with strangers, with anyone who would listen. Some of them looked at me like I was insane. Others were moved. A few even told me that they had been feeling lost, stuck in their own pain, and my words gave them hope. That was all I needed. I didn't need to convince everyone. I just needed to reach the ones who were ready to hear it. I started volunteering at a local shelter, helping the homeless, talking to people who felt invisible, like I once had. I could see their pain, their hopelessness, and I knew that I had to show them that there was more, that there was love, that there was a way out of the cycle of despair. Every day was a new opportunity to live out the mission I had been given. I wasn't just a janitor anymore. I wasn't just a man going through life aimlessly. I was a messenger, a beacon of hope, a vessel for the love I had experienced and now carried within me. And with every person I helped, every life I touched, I knew that my purpose was unfolding before me. I didn't have all the answers, but I knew this. Love was the answer. Love was what had healed me, and love was what would heal the world. It was time to spread that love. It was time to be the change. I wasn't the same man who had walked into that hospital. I was a new man with a new purpose, and I would spend the rest of my life sharing the message of love that had saved me. And as I walked through the streets of New York, I knew one thing for certain. I wasn't just cleaning up after others anymore. I was helping to clean up the world, one heart at a time.